question period. I recognize His Majesty's, the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Yesterday, and this question is to the Premier, because yesterday, Premier, we gave you an opportunity to reverse course. It is clear that you have not taken the time to listen to students and their families who are impacted by this government's cuts to OSAP. I wanted to share something with the Premier today, Speaker, that I heard from a nursing student at Mohawk College recently, and that she asked me to share. She says, "As a mother of 3 and a nursing student, OSAP is not just financial aid to me, it is the reason I am able to stay in school. Choosing to go back to school was not an easy decision. It meant reducing my income. It meant balancing clinical placements, assignments, exams, raising young children, including a baby who still needs daycare." So my question to the Premier is, what does the Premier have to say to students like this who are having to stop their education because of his cuts?
I recognize the Minister of Community Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. The Premier and I have been very clear. The OSAP framework was unsustainable. In fact, the Auditor General stated it was unsustainable in 2017 as well, but a desperate Liberal government decided to move forward with 85% grants because they were desperate.
Order.
Speaker, we understand that we need financial aid not just for these students, but for the next generation of students. When it comes to health human resources, we do have our Ontario Learn and Stay grant, which we've invested over $173 million, helping 13,000 students in health human resource programming, and we'll continue to be there for our students, Speaker.
Acting Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, 8 years in, and they still can't stop blaming everybody else for their problems, right? This government may not be fazed by the stories like the one I've just shared, but I am, and I look up at the students in this gallery today. They feel the future slipping through their fingers, Speaker. That is what they are telling us. They are just asking for a chance, a fair chance to finish what they started or start at all. So I ask the Premier again, will he listen to the students and the families across this province and stop his cuts to OSAP grants?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is worried about her leadership slipping through her fingers. She's had her deputy leader go over to the Liberal side because that party is chaos, Speaker. But we'll continue to be there. We just invested $6.4 billion into the sector, the largest single investment into post-secondary education, not only in Ontario history, but Canadian history, Speaker. We will continue to be there for the sector, as we always have been, but I will remind the member the Ray days. When she was a staffer as the Bob Ray government, tuition went up 3 times the rate of inflation at the hands of that government. And it went up 3 times the rate of inflation when the Liberals were in power as well, Speaker. So thank God we've been in power for the last 8 years, because tuition would be over $14,000 if you were in power.
Order. Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, well, Speaker, I wish I could say this was surprising, but none of it is. And, you know, I'll tell you the other thing I keep hearing from students is they think that the reason that maybe this Premier is making these cuts that are going to predominantly impact low, middle-income students is because he can't empathize with them. He can't empathize with the experiences of regular young people and families in this province. As many young people have pointed out to me, he was raised with a silver spoon in his mouth, right? He's been strolling down Easy Street his whole life. He never had to worry about affording tuition, like so many young people and so many families have to do today. But I got to tell you this, students in Ontario, they're not going to be just handed some sort of cushy executive job in their dad's company when they graduate. So doesn't the Premier get that not everyone in Ontario has it as easy as he did?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. I am proud to be the first Minister of Colleges and Universities that is a college grad, and that was on purpose. We came from a one-income family. I had no silver spoon in my mouth. I've been called a burger flipper many, many times. I stayed because I wanted to open a business, and going to university would have put debt on my career. So I had to ensure I stayed local. And I made the choice to stay local because I wanted to open a small business. I made the difficult decision to ensure I stayed local so that I afforded college to be able to open a small business. I will remind you the ratios from grants to loan are exactly in line with BC and Manitoba, your NDP friends.
Back to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Let's talk about another broken promise, shall we? End hallway health care. End hallway health care. That was a promise made by this Premier 8 long years ago. End the hallway health care that had run rampant after 15 years of a failed Liberal government. But here we are, 8 years later, and it is worse than ever. Speaker, I want to raise a few issues here with the Premier today, because this is apparently now the norm across this province. At Sudbury's Health Science Centre, Health Science North, 120 patients were treated in hallways daily this year. Just the other day, I was in Hamilton and I was sitting down with a steelworker who's getting cancer treatment. He's 66 years old. He spent 9 hours in the hallway, in the emergency room. And then he was told, you know what, you're going to have to spend the night lying in the hallway at the hospital. I mean, can you imagine? Will the Premier explain why he has abandoned his promise to end hallway health care and abandoned so many patients across this province?
Recognize the Minister of Health.
Speaker, since Premier Ford came into office, we have in fact expanded increased funding to our hospital partners by over 50%. Are we working with them to make sure that they spend that money wisely? Absolutely. We are doing that work ongoing. But I will point to a quote that I received on December from Sudbury Health Sciences North. We'd like to extend our appreciation for the base and one-time funding allocation provided to Health Sciences North. This funding allocation provides and enables the organization to continue to provide important health services to the people of Northern Ontario. That's your Sudbury Hospital.
There you go. Good job.
Back to the Leader of the Opposition.
Let me be very clear with this minister, right? We have lost more nurses in this province than they have hired, right? It is a net loss. I don't know what the Minister of Health doesn't understand about that. She can quote back all the CEOs she wants to at us. No, not only has this Premier failed to clean up the Liberal hallway mess, not only has this become the norm across this entire province, but this Premier has also decided that hallway health care isn't even worth tracking anymore. Let me explain that. You know, I would say that I guess when you're failing as miserably as this government is, you don't want to publish your test scores anymore. This is the pattern with this government. You got a Premier who's hiding his cell phone records, right? You've got a Premier who has now decided that the public shouldn't know the extent of the hallway healthcare crisis. Can the Premier come clean about why he is hiding hallway healthcare data from the people of Ontario?
Minister of Health.
Thank you. 100,000 new nurses that have registered in the province of Ontario. 30,000 nursing students who are training in the province of Ontario. A learn and stay program that did not exist under previous governments, where nursing students get their tuition and their books covered in exchange for working in communities that need those primary care nurses, those world-class clinicians. You know, I look at where we have come, and I do not want to go back to what we were faced with when we had physicians who didn't want to work in the province of Ontario. We had governments that were simply not training healthcare professionals. And now we have a system or program in place where we are seeing more people connected to primary care providers and ensuring that that support means it funnels through to emergency departments, to ICUs, to our home care workers and our long-term.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, it's very disappointing not to have the Premier be able to stand up and answer these questions. Maybe a little bit of performance anxiety this morning. I will say what we are seeing here today is a net loss. A net loss. So let me give you an example, Minister of Health. In the past year, the government has fired 700 nurses. We are losing nurses faster than we
Minister
can
of
hire
Natural
them.
Resources.
And in places like Manitoba and Nova Scotia, they are guaranteeing that new graduates will have jobs, but not here. Not here in the province of Ontario. Here in the province of Ontario, hallway healthcare is now the status quo. It is the norm under this government. Can this premier stand here in his place and tell me, are you not embarrassed to become the very thing that you campaigned against?
Minister of Health.
Speaker, you know, I've always found in debates that when you go personal, it's because you're not winning the debate. I look at how we have transformed our healthcare system, how we are training more people in lab technicians, in nursing, in nurse practitioners. We are making the investments in our education system. We are making the investments to ensure that our hospitals have the support they need again. An over 50% increase in their baseline budgets. That means that they can focus on patient care. And are we asking them to also ensure that the money that we are flowing is being spent on frontline patient-focused care? Absolutely we are. It is partly why we need to do this work. If we're going to make those investments of over 50%, we're also going to ensure that money...
Question. I recognize the Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you very much, Speaker. After 8 years of this Premier and his out-of-gas Conservative government, the things that people count on, they're just not there. Ontarians aren't asking for much. They just want their kids' schools to be safe places to learn and to work. They're not. They want their sons or daughters to graduate from college, university, or get a trade without crushing debt. Well, the Premier is piling that debt on now and making life harder. So my question for the Premier is, why? Life is hard already, Premier. Why are you making life harder for Ontario families?
Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. You used the word gas. I really like that because who was it that cut the gas tax? Was it those folks? No. Did they vote for that? Did we put it forward? Yes. And did we vote for it? Yes. And did we pass it? Yes. On behalf of all Ontarians, lower gas taxes. Madam Speaker, we worked early in July of 2022 to cut the gas tax. This government had the vision to put more money back in the pockets of people. $12 billion more back in the pockets of the people of Ontario. Because God forbid that the NDP or the Liberals ever had $12 billion to spend. We all know how they'd spend it. They keep it all in their pockets instead of the people's pockets and instead of the pockets of businesses. That's why this government is making life more affordable for the people of Ontario and the businesses of Ontario, putting money back in their pockets.
Leader of the Third Party.
I know the half trillion dollar man loves debt, but he shouldn't be foisting it onto Ontario families. Yeah. So while the Premier is focused on things like floating convention centres, luxury spas, airports, you know, I'm trying to figure out what's next. Could we have a Ferris wheel here at Queen's Park and free candy for the kids? And that's not what Ontarians are looking for. So if you're out of a job in Windsor or Kingston or Thunder Bay or Sault Ste. Marie or Kingston, you don't care about Billy Bishop. You want a job. The Premier's record? Folks, the Premier's record, you should all hear this. Listen, 1,000 fewer manufacturing jobs than there were in 2018. So my question for the Speaker, or for the Premier is, Speaker, life is hard already. Why is the Premier making it harder for Ontario families?
Minister of Finance.
Oh, Madam Speaker, well, my honourable colleague here, he did mention debt, so I'll come to that. So I hear the word debt or deficit, and just to remind everyone in the House, we have the lowest deficit and debt relative to our economy in over 15 years. Because under their leadership, you know what happened? They raised taxes, they built nothing, and credit rating agencies, what did they do? They downgraded the government under the leadership of the Liberals. And what are we doing? We're using debt to build infrastructure, $230 billion of infrastructure. And you know what that does? That builds hospitals, that builds roads, that builds schools, long-term care, that builds transit, all for not just this generation, future generations, putting the people of Ontario to work, not just for today, but for tomorrow.
Back to the Leader of the Third Party.
We're in $500 billion debt. Just read that answer. Read that answer. So after 8 long years, this government and this premier are out of gas, out of ideas, tired, and out of touch. 2 million people, they still don't have a family doctor. They don't want a luxury spa. They want a doctor. And we have record ER closures in this province. And this morning, Northern Hospital Association said to us, we're on the brink. We can't survive on a shoestring budget. And while the Premier is focused on his fantasies, our healthcare system is drowning. So I'm going to ask again, and maybe the Premier can answer. Life is hard already. Why are you making it harder for Ontarians?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, $91 billion. $91 billion. When we took over, is in the low 60 billions. This Minister of Health, this Premier, this government, every one of us invested in health care from $60 billion to $90 billion, making sure that we invest right across in acute care, in home care, in long-term care, in mental health and addiction care. And you know what happened with that investment? The CIHI data comes out and tells us we are leading the country in attachments to family doctors. Leading the country. But does the Minister of Health stop there? She says, no, that's not good enough. We need to attach every single Ontarian to a family doctor. And thanks to the leadership of the Minister of Health, along with Dr. Jane Philpott, we are on the path of making sure that everybody in Ontario has access to a family doctor. That's what government does.
My question's for the Premier. And so, after 8 long years, this Premier and his Conservative government are so out of touch, they can't see that there's an affordability crisis. And if you needed any confirmation on that, you just have to look to what the Premier and his party did to young people and their families when they broke OSAP, driving young people and their families further into debt. And you don't ask me, just take it from Lee. I'm a single parent on a low income, sending my daughter to university to become a mechanical engineer, so she will not have to struggle like me. And now, after her first year, she may not be able to afford to go for her second year. So, Speaker, why is the Premier and his party making life harder for young people and their families, and will they fix OSAP ASAP?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
The interim leader needs to stop fear-mongering and recognize that we have a higher grant ratio than under 15 years of Liberal government, Speaker. That member actually ignored the Auditor General in 2017 when they were desperate, and they decided to hopefully hang on to government and increase it to 85%. The Auditor General made it very clear it was unsustainable, Speaker. And since the federal government has changed our career colleges and the uptake of OSAP, we saw a $2.3 billion pressure this August if we did not act. We are acting, Speaker, to ensure that OSAP is sustainable, not just for these students, but for the next generation of students behind them as well, Speaker.
Leader of the Third Party.
I can understand where the government's coming from, because you have a Premier who's put no value on education ever. And if this was such a great announcement they made, why was the Premier nowhere to be seen? Nowhere to be seen. So you just don't understand, Premier, that the most valuable thing in the global economy is highly trained, highly skilled, healthy people. So if you did, you wouldn't let our hope for the future wither. So don't take it from me, okay? Ask Syed. I'm waiting to start college this September, and I come from a low-income household. I've been trying to find a job, but it's very hard right now, right, Premier? OSAP is my only real hope to afford my education and work towards my dreams. Grants make a huge difference to students like me.
Question.
So, Speaker, why is the Premier and his party and making life so much harder for young people and their families?
The Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. I would just remind the member our $6.4 billion investment into the sector, which is going to add another 70,000 newly funded seats, and that's on top of the 20,000 funded seats in Budget 2025, Speaker.
Order!
The operating funding for our sector is going from $5 billion last year to $7 billion this fall. That's a 30% increase. We're bringing more seats online for our youth to ensure that there is a seat for them at colleges, universities, and Indigenous institutes if that's where they choose to go.
On a supplementary.
Well, I'm not sure what $6.2 billion in 2005 would be in 2026 dollars. But I know it's more historic than the historic thing you're talking about. But it's not about historic. It's actually about what's happening to families. What's happening to families is the Premier is piling on debt like the Finance Minister is to Ontario families every single day. Right? The thing that's going to get us out of this thing is making sure that we have people who can compete in the new economies, in the global economy. And just don't take it from me. But here is a message from Abigail. The job market is scarce, and everything from school to food is getting more expensive daily. Money has always been a stressor, and these cuts are making me unsure of how I can pay for my future, something I have always been passionate about. So, Speaker, back to the Premier. One answer. That's all I'm asking for today. Why are you making life so much harder for young people and their families in Ontario?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Well, if the interim leader wants to talk about historic, let's talk about historic increases in tuition under your watch. 83% increase in tuition. That is 3 times the rate of inflation. Are you proud of that? He's ignoring me. But regardless, Speaker, we're going to continue to be there, and I hope that member is clarifying to the students that our universities have $1.8 billion every year of grants that they give out, as well as our enhanced student access guarantee. But I know he's not doing that. He's fear-mongering them, Speaker. The money will still be there for OSAP. If they received OSAP last year, they're going to receive OSAP this fall. So please clarify to the students that the supports will continue to be available for them.
I recognize the member for River Black.
Thank you, Speaker. The FIFA World Cup is right around the corner, and it should be illegal to scoop up and resell tickets for anything above face value. New Democrats have been saying this for years, while this government has defended greedy resellers and the big corporations that rip off fans. But this weekend, the Premier has taken a miraculous 180 degrees on this issue and now agrees with the NDP. Lucky for him, we've already introduced a bill to make it happen. So now that we are all in agreement, will this government pass into law today our Fans First Act to make it illegal to resell tickets for anything above face value?
I recognize the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And it's great to see that the NDP is changing their stripes here, because if I'm not mistaken, over the past 8 years, they voted against every single affordability measure we brought to this legislature, whether it was the gas tax cut, the one-pass fare, whatever. We could go on and on. Bottom line, our Premier has made it very clear he cares about affordability. He cares about the people being able to go to cultural, sporting events. I agree with him. And that's why we'll be putting forward legislation this week that will put fans first, that will allow tickets to be resold in the province of Ontario only at face value. Unlike the previous Liberal proposal, which had a 50% markup, we are going to have enhanced transparency, face value for consumers. We're on the side of consumers. We're going to keep fighting for the people.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Speaker. The Premier had 8 years to put fans first and did nothing. Taylor Swift fans were locked out by bots snatching up tickets minutes after they went on sale. when the Blue Jay fans were priced out of their own stadium, the Premier shrugged his shoulders and told Ontarians to stay in their man caves. The World Cup is coming to Ontario, and it's already too late for FIFA fans who can't afford the predatory resale prices. Over the last 2 years, the Ontario NDP has put in 2 motions calling on this Premier to ban the sale of ticket resales above the original face value, and he did nothing. Speaker, why would anybody believe him now?
Order. I'm going to ask the members to come to order. The chatter across the aisle has to stop. I recognize the Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And let's be clear, Ontarians deserve a ticketing system that works for fans, not just price gougers. That's why we're
Waterloo
taking
will come to
real
order.
action.
Windsor West will come to order.
That's why we've taken real action, Speaker. And not only that, we've banned ticket bots with penalties up to $50,000 for individuals, $250,000 for companies. We require all-in pricing in Canadian dollars, no hidden fees. We mandate resale agreements, meaning if a ticket isn't valid, the consumer will get their money back. And we made it illegal to list tickets that you don't actually have. And our enforcement on this, Speaker, will only be increasing going forward. We're focused on helping the consumers of Ontario, helping the people of Ontario afford to go to the tickets, to the concerts, to the shows they want, whether it's the Maple Leafs or Taylor Swift or FIFA that's coming up, and we're looking forward to that. Ontario people will be able to go to these because we care first and foremost for the people of Ontario and affordability.
Hear, hear. I recognize the member for Don Valley East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this month, the Premier proposed to change the very freedom of information laws that hold our government accountable. It was the most transparent attempt to hide from transparency. An attempt he felt necessary because after 8 long years, all he can do is hide from his broken promises. Protect Ontario from tariffs? He made them worse. Protect Ontario from job losses? He made those worse. Protect Ontario from criminals? He got shaken down by crooks after home care patients had their health information stolen for ransom. And that man let the criminals collect. Now he's going to miss an April 1st deadline imposed by the federal government to stop illegal user fees and extra charges in healthcare. Will the Premier reimburse every single bill that Ontario patients receive from their nurse practitioner after April 1st, or will he continue to break the law?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, there is...
Yeah, you can't say that.
Thank you. The Minister of Health.
Said previously, when you're not winning an argument, you go low. So, back to nurse practitioners. There is no doubt that Ontario has been a leader in engaging and embracing nurse practitioners in our world-class healthcare system. We were, of course, one of the first jurisdictions that actually ensured that nurse practitioners were not only being trained in the province of Ontario, but were being embedded in our primary care teams, with our family physicians, with nurses, with mental health care workers, with dietitians. Look, we are actually training more nurse practitioners in the province of Ontario now because we see the value and what the work that they do is so important in our home cares, in our long-term cares, and in our hospitals. And we'll continue to make those investments because we know that nurse practitioners who are trained in the province of Ontario and working in the province of Ontario do exceptional work.
Madam Speaker, of course you didn't answer the question, so back to the Premier. The Premier is always writing a letter to blame someone for something. But how many letters has the man actually read in the last 8 years? Has he read the letter from the federal government that he received about 1 year ago, in which the feds mandated a deadline to fully fund all medically necessary services provided by NPs and to stop private billing? And the deadline for that mandate? April 1st, 2026. That's next week, Premier. 18 months ago, I wrote legislation to fully embrace nurse practitioners in our public system. And every single one of these Conservative MPPs voted no. They voted to make the lives of their constituents more expensive. They voted to leave tens of thousands of them without access to primary care. Will the Premier comply fully with the Canada Health Act, and will he completely fund all medically necessary care provided by nurse practitioners?
Minister of Health.
No, a $3.4 billion investment in interprofessional primary care teams means that nurse practitioners, doctors, physicians, RNs, dietitians, mental health workers are actually working together. The member opposite is suggesting that we want all these standalone individuals to be able to bill when we know patients want and practitioners want the ability to work together in an interprofessional team. And $3.4 billion of investment mean we are doing that. 240 where we have had multiple new expansions in Sudbury, in Ottawa. I can name every community in the province of Ontario that has a new or expanded community health centre, interprofessional primary care team, family health team. That's making the difference, where those individuals are working together with their clinical partners to serve who? The patients of the province of Ontario. Thank you.
Question. I recognize the member for Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Finance. Speaker, people in my riding of Newmarket Aurora are relying on our government to maintain a strong economy, to create good-paying jobs, and to support public services. But with tariffs and trade uncertainty affecting the lives of people here at home, it is clear that our government must continue to do more to protect Ontario businesses and families. The minister has outlined many times that our government has a plan to invest, to build, to grow, and to prosper. Through you, Speaker, can the minister please tell the House what measures our government is taking to protect Ontario now and into the future?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. This one's a lot tougher than the one I got before. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my thanks to the great member for that question. Madam Speaker, trade pressures, supply chain disruptions, and shifting markets are sending unpredictable shocks through economies everywhere, but our government has stood up and faced those challenges head on. We've put $12 billion back into the pockets of Ontario families, created 1 million more jobs, and led our nation to unlock interprovincial free trade. Madam Speaker, we have done all of this without sacrificing our historic investments in the public services, including health care, education, social service, all the while cutting taxes, Madam Speaker. Our plan is working, and we will continue to deliver on our mandate to protect Ontario.
Back to the member for Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the minister for his answer. At a time when workers, businesses, and families are facing real economic uncertainty, people in my community are encouraged to see our government taking action to support them and to protect their livelihoods. However, Speaker, it is important that we maintain our course and not let down our guard. We must keep building critical infrastructure, putting more money back in people's pockets, and supporting public services while keeping taxes down. Now, through you, Speaker, can the minister please tell the House how our government will continue to protect Ontario's economy and ensure lasting prosperity for the residents of Newmarket Aurora and across this great province?
Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you again to the member from Newmarket Aurora for that terrific question. You know, Madam Speaker, we have seen other jurisdictions, other provinces raise taxes and cut public services. But we here in Ontario have chosen another path, a path to continue to deliver on our economic plan for growth and for prosperity. Our government is choosing to act by boosting competitiveness, to empower businesses, lowering costs to support families, and making historic investments to strengthen our services. Madam Speaker, this Thursday, March 26th, I will release our 2026 provincial budget. And with it, I will reveal the next steps in our government's plan to deliver growth and prosperity for Ontario today and for future generations.
I recognize the member for University Rosedale.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. On Thursday, we will be grading the government's budget on whether it fixes the issues that actually matter: healthcare, education, housing, affordability. And after 8 years of this government, a lot of things need fixing. We have a doctor shortage. We need more teachers in classrooms. The cost of rent and groceries keeps going up and up and up. So my question is this: is the budget going to trot out the same game of cuts and favours to friends, or are you actually going to start fixing the problems that you are responsible for creating in the first place?
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, let me understand this, the question from the member opposite. Should we continue making historic investments in healthcare? What do you think, folks? Historic investments in making sure our students in our schools and more money gets to teachers, like the teacher card, $750 of supplies. Should we do more of that? Should we continue to improve the lives of our most vulnerable by investing in social services? What do you think? 100%. And should we continue to invest in the economy so that people have a good paying job here in this province, like investing $210 billion in infrastructure? What do you think? Is the answer yes or no? The answer is yes. And what do they say? The answer is no. So, Madam Speaker, stay tuned, only 2 more sleeps, and we'll reveal our plan to build Ontario.
The member for University Rosedale.
Thank you. They weren't very enthusiastic yeses there, Minister. Look, my question is back to the Premier. I'll tell you who's really concerned about the budget: young people, especially the young people who are going to be out on the lawn today, because they know this government is not working for them. They face high rent, they face rising tuition, they face high grocery prices and rising unemployment. They do not want to be saddled with more student debt. They want good jobs and they want a future here. So on Budget Day, my question is simple. When it comes to helping young people get ahead, do you honestly think your budget is going to pass the test?
Minister of Finance.
I don't know. I hope my budget passes. I think we've got a good shot. So let's think about this. Youth unemployment. You know, what we're working on is making sure that everyone has an opportunity in this great country, just like my parents who came here with no job, no money in their pockets. And what did Ontario and Canada give them? An opportunity. Let's think about the Minister of Education, who's making sure that our teachers are supported, making sure our students with the curriculum, whether it's skilled trades, healthcare work, whether it's education, is having the best opportunity for once they graduate. Post-secondary education, our great Minister of Colleges and Universities, who's put in another $6.4 billion to make sure that those students have the opportunity to pursue their dreams. And then when the great economy, when you have 1 million new jobs created, but you're out of a job, guess what? The Minister of Labour steps up with skills and development training and reskilling and retraining so that you can continue to have a good paying job. And guess what? Every minister and every government member is investing in nuclear, in critical minerals, in infrastructure. Madam Speaker, we've got a plan, and that plan is working.
Number 4, Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. Last week at an OSAP demonstration, I met this awesome high school student named Noah. Noah is the oldest of 4 and helps care for his grandmother at home with his single mom. Noah has a dream of being a lawyer, but because of this government's cruel changes to OSAP, he's worried that he'll graduate buried in debt. This out-of-touch Conservative government says that there's no money for students like Noah. That is unsustainable. But somehow we have enough money for a new convention centre in downtown Toronto or the Premier's fantasy tunnel under the 401. So, Speaker, after 8 long years, why is this tired government making life harder and more unaffordable for young people like Noah?
The Minister of Colleges and Universities.
I'm not sure what that member's talking about no money. $6.4 billion is a pretty significant amount of money. You know, part of that is $3.3 billion, Speaker, for those high-cost, high-priority programs that our province desperately needs. $1.7 billion for 70,000 newly funded seats. That's on top of the $750 million of 20,000 new STEM seats last year. And $284 million for small, northern, rural, and French institutions. And I'll remind that member, his party, the Liberal government, called it a no man's land in the north, but we are investing into our northern institutions, as well as $57 million for Indigenous institutes. Speaker, $7 billion is going into operating funding this September. That's an increase of 30% since last year.
Order. I'll remind the Leader of the Third Party to come to order. Back to the member for Nepean.
It's Bob Ray's fault.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This minister needs to update his references. He's accusing us of things that were said in the 1990s, honestly. Speaker, one of the reasons why I'm here today is because of what this government did to OSAP in 2019. When I was a student nurse, I was one of the students that lost a bunch of OSAP because of your hundreds of millions of dollars of cuts to the program. So you tout all these new seats in schools, but you are completely ignoring the fact that it's unaffordable. So I'm asking you again, do you think all the students outside right now are here to thank you? No, they're here protesting the unaffordability crisis that you've created for them, and they're fighting for their future. So, Speaker, through you to the Premier, will this out-of-touch government scrap their changes to OSAP and fix OSAP ASAP?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
I'll remind that member, the only member that's left from 2017 is the interim leader. They ignored the Auditor General. You ignored the Auditor General. Everyone else was decimated because the Auditor General understood that it was unsustainable, Speaker. Speaker, they broke OSAP. We're bringing sustainability back to OSAP, Speaker. He knows it. He's not even listening to my answer, Speaker, because they know the reason we have unaffordability is because the 83% increase in tuition when they were in power, Speaker. There's not a tax that the Liberals don't like, Speaker, and tuition is a tax to them.
Order. I recognize the member for Guelph.
Speaker, my question is for the Premier. While the Premier talks about spending billions on a tunnel and an island and an airport, people are telling me they are tired of working so hard to make ends meet while the wealthy and well-connected get richer. And now the Premier is piling more debt onto students and their families by cutting OSAP. That's why thousands are on the front lawn today protesting. They understand that these cuts will hurt low and middle income families and students the most. Cuts like this are why the rich are getting richer and everyone else is out of luck. So, Speaker, is an island airport more important than our children's future? Will the Premier reverse his cuts to OSAP?
I recognize the Premier.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that's the reason they should never, ever be elected again in the history of Ontario. I'll tell you why. The island airport is going to be 25,000 jobs of construction, tens of thousands of jobs of tourism. They don't want it. They'd rather have a little cow pasture there. They want to close down the airport, just close it down, the crown jewel. Then let's talk about the convention centre. They're all right being in last place in North America. They're all right being in last place in every category there is. We're going to build a world-class convention centre, and we are not going to take a back seat to little cities like Baltimore
that are eating our lunch because we don't have a proper convention center. We're going to build a 2 million square foot world-class convention center. Let's talk about the 401 that goes right up towards your town, and there's congestion that's costing us $57 billion of lost economic growth because we're absolutely... I'll stop. Wait for the second.
Back to the member for Guelph.
Speaker, that answer shows how the Premier is out of touch with people all across this province. I want to remind the Premier that the province of Ontario is bigger than the city of Toronto. Families across this province, especially in rural communities, are struggling to get by, pay for housing, pay for groceries, and the Premier is spending billions in Toronto. Meanwhile, students are struggling to pay rent. They're struggling to pay groceries. They're struggling to pay tuition, all going up because of this government's policies. I'm calling on the Premier today, Speaker, to get back in touch with the real affordability crisis that's happening and actually stand up today and look students in the face and tell them he'll reverse his cuts to OSAP because they deserve an affordable future.
I recognize the Premier.
Thank you to the Leader of the Green Party. I find it pretty rich, Madam Speaker, that up in his area in Guelph, Linamar is investing $1 billion. Do you know why Linda's investing $1 billion? Because she's told me we've created the environment and the conditions. We have the brightest people. We're graduating 80,000 STEM graduates, going up to 100,000 STEM graduates. That's what we're focused on. And congratulations, because of us, Guelph has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire province. Not because of you, because the environment we have created. And more companies are going to his riding. More and more companies are coming from around the world to invest because we've cut $12 billion off the backs of the people and off the backs of businesses. One other point, Madam Speaker, it looks like you're getting up. So one other point, someone said about crime, my member over there, about crime. Let's talk about crime. Your federal cousins are...
Recognize the member for Whitby.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Energy and Mines. Ontario's delivering real results when it comes to clean, reliable energy. With the completion of the Darlington refurbishment, our province has shown that we can deliver one of the largest nuclear projects in the world on time and under budget. Speaker, we know that at a time when Ontario families and businesses are looking for certainty, affordability, and reliability, that kind of performance
Orleans
matters.
Will come to order.
Under the leadership of this Premier, our government is setting the standard for how major energy projects should be delivered. Speaker, can the minister explain what this milestone means for Ontario's energy system and our economy?
Recognize the Minister of Energy and Mines.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for Whitby for his strong support, like the Minister of Education, for Ontario's nuclear sector. I also want to announce to the legislature today that after a large-scale refurbishment, the largest in the world, OPG has returned the Darlington nuclear generating station ahead of schedule and $150 million below budget. And that is a real material win for the people of Ontario and for Canada's clean energy future. Our Premier has a vision to build made-in-Canada energy. Energy sovereignty starts here at home. 90% of that refurbishment, 93% to be specific, was invested in this country. And the Liberals would have closed the Pickering nuclear generating station as a demonstration of a different approach of turning away from made-in-Canada solutions. We're doubling down on Canada. We're firing up the supply chain. We're supporting workers and affordable power for another 40 years. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Back to the member for Whitby.
Thank you, Minister, for the important update. Families and businesses in Whitby are encouraged to see our government taking action and delivering major infrastructure projects that support reliable, affordable energy in their community. Speaker, Ontario's success at Darlington is drawing attention from across the world. Countries that once turned away from nuclear power are now reversing course as they face rising demand, higher prices, and growing concerns about energy security. At the same time, electricity demand here in Ontario is expected to grow significantly in the years ahead. Speaker, can the minister explain how Ontario is building on this success to lead globally while meeting growing demand at home?
Recognize the member for Mississauga Lakeshore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After years of short-sighted decisions that ignored energy security and affordability, jurisdictions around the world are reversing course. Ontario's taking a different approach. We are committed to being a global leader in nuclear technology. That includes being the G7's first small modular reactor at Darlington, a nation-building project that will power 1.2 million homes, create 18,000 jobs, and add over $38 billion to our economy. Our government is supporting good-paying jobs and building a nuclear infrastructure needed to make this province an energy superpower. Thank you.
I recognize the member for London Fanshawe.
Speaker, students at Fanshawe College in my riding are already facing the reality of graduating into a worsening job market. With unemployment rates in London now 8.9%, what does this government do to help students? They remove the 6-month interest grace period and cut OSAP grants, forcing students to take on more debt. This is the future this government is setting up for them. Borrow more, rack up interest sooner, and good luck finding a job. How can the Premier stand by and justify making things harder for students?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
I just want to clarify there still is a 6-month payment-free grace period after graduation, Speaker. These are not your standard bank loans, Speaker. OSAP is prime plus 1% once they graduate into their future careers. Speaker, we need to understand that the sector has changed significantly since the federal government has made significant changes. The Auditor General came out yesterday. We trusted the federal government too much with the international students, and now we have the chaos we're living through right now, Speaker. I think you should read the Auditor General's report yesterday from the federal government. It really clearly articulates they've created a mess with the international student, Speaker. But that's why we've invested a historic amount of $6.4 billion for the sector to ensure stability. The federal government created instability, and we're creating stability for the sector so that the students at Fanshawe will have a job and a career after they graduate from the college.
Member for London Fanshawe.
Speaker, when the government announced their OSAP grant cuts up to 60% in February, hundreds of London high school students rallied against these cuts. They told me that they already had made plans to and applied for college and university programs, paid the $150 application fee based on the previous system. Now, after this government's reckless OSAP cuts, students are reconsidering their university and college offers because they just can't risk thousands of dollars of more debt in an uncertain job market. Premier, why are you so callously choosing to cut OSAP and pull the rug out from under grade 12 students?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
The opposition needs to stop fear-mongering with cuts. The only thing I've cut recently, Speaker, is my hair to get back into this House. Speaker, OSAP will continue to be there for the students because we're ensuring sustainability for the sector. The Liberals decimated OSAP. They did not listen to the Auditor General when the Auditor General said these grant-to-loan ratios are out of line and unsustainable, Speaker. Speaker, I will remind that member that both the NDP in BC and Manitoba are well in line with our grant-to-loan ratio, as well as the federal government, Speaker. So please, ensure that the students know that there's a lot more supports available than just from the government. As I mentioned earlier, our universities give out $1.8 billion of grants and bursaries every single year. And that's on top of our enhanced student access guarantee. You know, it's interesting that they ask the questions about OSAP, but nobody will listen to the answers I'm giving them. And that's the problem. They're giving half the information to the students and setting them down the wrong path.
Recognize the member for Canada Carleton.
Thank you, Speaker. This government prides itself on their efforts to make Ontario great again. Yet it wants to make it harder for students to seek higher education. The Premier has chosen to prioritize luxury spas, booze in corner stores and strip clubs instead of education. Students need to go to school to learn the skills and trades that will help all Ontarians, and OSAP is a lifeline to many. The Ontario Federation of Students says that the government proposed changes to OSAP, downloading education debt, will be a devastating blow to students. Why is the Premier making it harder for young people in Ontario to build a better future?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
I'll remind that member, before we came in power in 2018, tuition went up 12% over 2 years under the Liberal government. We are the government that cares about affordability for our students. We cut and froze tuition in 2018, which is going to continue to save $1,800 per university student and $450 per college student. Speaker, and those savings will continue to be felt by the next generation of students. During that time that we froze tuition, the average tuition went up 18 to 41% across Canada, and we froze it during that period. So the sector has changed significantly, Speaker. We've put a 2% modest increase on tuition, which amounts to about 18 cents a day for a college student and 47 cents a day for a university student, Speaker.
Member for Kinetic-Carlson.
Speaker, Ontario students are being asked to take on significantly more debt under these new OSAP rules, with grants being reduced and loans making up a much larger share of the aid. For many low and middle-income students, grants were the difference between accessing post-secondary education or not attending at all. Across decades of data from organizations like the World Bank and the OECD, it has been proven time and time again that societies with higher levels of education tend to be richer, healthier, safer, and more stable. So, why does the Premier not want that for the people of Ontario, and why does he insist on making life harder for students and their families?
Minister of Colleges and Universities.
Thank you, Speaker. It's very ironic coming from that member when, under the Liberal government, we had the highest tuition in Canada when we came into power, Speaker, because of their actions, because of the 83% increase in tuition, which was 3 times the rate of inflation. They do not care about affordability, Speaker. Unfortunately, you do not. You do not, because if you did care about affordability, if you did care about the students' understanding of the changes to OSAP, you would clarify to them that 25% is much more generous than the 15 years under the Liberal government. It was only 15% grants. And the interim leader knows that. He's actually listening this time, Speaker, which is really great to see. Speaker, we've saved $1,800 per university student and $450 per college student, Speaker. It's our government that cares about affordability. As I said earlier, history speaks for itself. If the Liberals were in power right now, our tuition would be over $14,000 a year because you triple tuition at the rate of inflation.
Recognize the member for Essex.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response. We know that when communities across Ontario face emergencies such as flooding, extreme weather, and other unexpected events, being well prepared at the local level can make all the difference in protecting people and property. Municipalities, volunteer organizations, and First Nations partners have told us that having the right training, equipment, and local capacity is essential to responding quickly and effectively in a crisis. Speaker, can the Minister please explain how our government is strengthening the readiness of our local communities and organizations to better prepare for all types of emergencies?
I recognize the Minister of Emergency Preparedness.
Well, thank you to the member for that question. Madam Speaker, a safe, practiced and prepared Ontario comes when communities and organizations have the resources they need to respond efficiently and effectively in times of crisis. Just last week, I announced our government is investing $5 million for the third consecutive year into the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant to help communities across the province prepare for and respond to emergencies. This investment provides communities and organizations up to $50,000 to enhance their emergency response capabilities through purchasing critical equipment and delivering emergency management training. We are preparing and planning, collaborating with an extensive network of emergency management partners, First Nations partners, and municipalities to ensure the safety of the people of Ontario. To date, 342 communities have received a combined $15 million in funding through this program. Speaker, when it comes to emergency management, our government is doing everything possible to ensure Ontario is ready for any challenge we may face.
Back to the member for Essex.
I thank the Minister for that response. Emergency management requires sustained province-wide investment and strong local partnerships. Communities in every region of Ontario face different risks and challenges, and they rely on our government to ensure they have the tools and the training they need before emergencies strike. Can the Minister speak further about how community emergency preparedness grants fit within our government's broader plan to strengthen emergency management across Ontario?
Back to the Minister for response.
I thank the member again for the opportunity to speak about our government's continuous work to improve emergency preparedness across Ontario. Madam Speaker, the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant is part of our historic $110 million investment to strengthen emergency preparedness in Ontario. Over the past months, I've had the opportunity to visit grant recipients in communities across the province, from Thunder Bay, Timmins in the north, to Leamington, Lakeshore, and Chatham-Kent in the southwest, and on to Cornwall, Rideau Lakes, Akwesasne First Nation, and Napanee in the east. Through the grant, recipients have been able to make impactful investments in their communities by purchasing generators, water purification systems, chainsaws, drones, and securing the necessary training to effectively respond during emergencies. This is Ontario, united in purpose to protect and support one another.
There being no further business, this House stands in recess until 3 p.m.